The letter to the Romans is epic, to say the least. The letter itself is large and covers a lot of theological territory. We're talking about justification by faith, sanctification, an appeal to unity in a diverse and divided church. I believe woven within the letter's intentional structure is actually another theme that is so important for every generation of the church. I'm calling this theme the missionary drive of the New Testament. The early chapters of Romans, we see this established God's righteousness, but also the devastating depravity of mankind. The reality that everyone is guilty to the Lord, from the unevangelized to the moralist to the faithless descendants of Abraham. This just gives momentum to this drive to share the good news. I think of Romans 1:13. I do not want you to be unaware, brethren, that often I have planned to come to you and have been prevented so far, so that I may obtain some fruit among you also, even as among the rest of the Gentiles. This may likely hint to the commitment to the frontiers of the gospel in Paul's heart. We see this later on sealed and communicated clearly in the closing sections of this letter. In Romans 15, starting with verse 20, we can read, "And thus I aspire to preach the gospel, not where Christ has already been named, so that I would not build on another man's foundation. But as it is written, they who had no news of him shall see, and they who have not heard shall understand. For this reason I have often been prevented from coming to you." So we see here, as Paul reflects on the things that he said and who the Lord is in the church, his intention and his motivation is to make Jesus known where he is not. So understanding the gospel and all its implications in life makes up so much of the substance of the letter, but that isn't just a means to mental assent. In other words, the good news is not performing its function if it's not being told to someone. I think Paul fiercely drives this home in chapter 10, starting in verse 12. "For there is no distinction between Jew and Greek, for the same Lord is the Lord of all, abounding in riches for all who call on him. For whoever will call on the name of the Lord will be saved." Verse 14. "How then will they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how will they believe in him whom they have not heard? And how will they hear without a preacher? And how will they preach unless they are sent? Just as it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news of good things." Verse 16. "However, did not all heed the good news? For Isaiah says, 'Lord, who has believed our report?'" And verse 17. "So faith comes from hearing, and hearing by the word of Christ." So this is where followers of Jesus need to find themselves gripped. This is a tension that we want to find ourselves in. This is a significant message. This drive to share the gospel and to preach Christ and his good news is an important message put alongside God's righteousness, our guilt, justification, sanctification, unity, all of these things, because they are the substance of God's heart. I love Isaiah 49, verse 6. It says, "He says, 'It is too small a thing that you should be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob and restore the preserved ones of Israel. I will also make you a light of the nations, so that my salvation may reach to the end of the earth.'" This heart of the Lord to see people come to know the truth and come to know Jesus, that the lost may be found, is our tension. It's our burden that we should joyously bear. And I love that Paul himself in chapter 1 even calls this debt. He describes it that I am indebted to Jew and Gentile. So as we study, as we exult in and over the theology and the beauty of this letter, my prayer is that the Holy Spirit would compel us to the preaching of the gospel, and especially the preaching of the gospel where he is not yet named.